Hello, Scrufftards. This is the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and welcome to Skruffytalez. And in this video, we will be going over a bunch of stuff that is helping Ukraine kicking Russian ass in this terrible war that Russia started. And hopefully, all of this stuff will, in the end, throw every Russian out of Ukraine. And we're starting off with some of the big boys, the CV-90s. Sweden has given Ukraine 51 SRF 9040 Charlie, a very powerful and capable infantry fighting vehicle with upgraded armor and a bunch of other nifty tools in the kit. And of course, it has the very powerful 40 millimeter Bofors automatic cannon. A cannon that can penetrate tanks in the flanks. So this is, you don't mess around with this vehicle. If it's not a tank, it can destroy it, and if it's a tank, it still stands a good chance of damaging, disabling, and potentially destroying it if it has the right angle on the tank. And not only that, Sweden has pledged Ukraine to build brand new CV-90s, CV-90 35 Mark III, very similar to the Dutch version. The Dutch, they have Spike anti-tank guided missiles on their version, a bunch of other stuff as well. It's a bit unclear what Ukraine will get, but these vehicles, CV-90-35s for Ukraine, apparently has priority on the production line. So everything else has stopped, and now Hägglunds, who produces CV-90s, are focusing on building CV-90s for Ukraine. So everyone else has to wait and, until Ukraine gets theirs. So when will Ukraine get these? In a year, this year, 2-3 years? Who knows? But yeah, brand new, top of the line, best in the world CV-90s, IFVs are coming to Ukraine, hopefully this year, but who knows when. And then Sweden also provided 10 STRV-122s, the Swedish version of the Leopard 2 tank. A bit different from other Leopard 2s. Mainly it has a shorter gun, but also very capable armor. Sweden added about 3 tons of armor to the Leopard 2 when they adopted the vehicle. And much of that armor was added to the turret as well as the top of the turret. And so the SRV-122 is very well suited for taking the fight to the enemy because it can take a lot of punishment that other Leopards are perhaps struggling a bit with. And also the shorter gun has, well, the implication is that it lacks punch at longer engagements, but the trade-off is that it has a more tactical advantage in forests and urban settings where the shorter barrel can be moved around more easily and won't get stuck on obstacles as easily as the more traditional longer barrel of the Leopard 2. And Sweden also provided Ukraine with 8 Archer artillery systems. A self-propelled gun, very famous for its shoot and scoot capability, coming to a full stopping, able to fire in 20 seconds, and can launch a salvo of 3 to 4 rounds and be on the move again in about a minute. Insanely fast setup speed for an artillery piece. It can drive, stop, open fire, and be on the move again, and it's all done in 60-70 seconds. Very fast, very effective, and fast firing as well. And so Ukraine received 8 of these, and all of these Swedish vehicles have also been provided with Barracuda camouflage that hides their heat signature and apparently also helps in hiding other spectrums of visibility. So they are very difficult to detect at night or relying on thermals or what have you. And a week or so ago, we learned that Sweden will provide Ukraine with 10 Combat Boat 90 and 20 G-boats. And the Combat Boat 90 is a heavy assault craft armed with 350 cal machine guns that allows the it can hold 18 infantry and marines, and you can drive straight up to the shore, straight up to an island, straight up to whatever, and the marines disembark at the front of the vessel and can then just rush into combat directly wherever they are deployed, on a beach, on a rocky shore, or wherever. And the G-boats, they are fast, nimble vessels designed for transport. Uh, you can move quickly across a river or between islands with these vessels. They don't carry that much firepower at all, but they are fast and you can get quickly into position and get troops and equipment across rivers or lakes or open sea or whatever. So these will be very useful for Ukraine in supporting the beachhead at Krynki and other places along the Dnipro River. It's also been mentioned that Sweden will supply Ukraine with underwater weapon systems, whatever that is, no one knows. And what Ukraine may use them for, who knows? It could be maybe mini subs to allow special forces to infiltrate Crimea. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Or even infiltrate occupied territory south of the Dnipro to facilitate further beachheads. Who knows? But yeah, very interesting on the underwater equipment that Sweden has promised Ukraine. Sweden has also provided Ukraine with RBS-70. Those are man pads, portable launched surface-to-air missiles, and they have been really effective in combating Russian gunships, attack helicopters. And the Russians have been forced to change their tactics, how they use their helicopters, because the RBS-70 was starting to shoot them down en masse. And then we also have the RB-17 coastal defense missile based on the American Hellfire anti-tank guided missile that Saab has tweaked a bit so we can use it for coastal defense. And it's set up by a couple of guys. You carry the setup as you can see in the image, and you put it all together, and then you just wait for a target to appear. And the Ukrainians have put it to good use. They've been launching it across the Dnipro. They've been using it on land against fixed Russian positions. And so the RB-17 has been put to good use down in Ukraine. And next we have a true workhorse of any military in any conflict, the Carl Gustav launcher. And as we can see in the image, Ukraine is using one of the older versions, not the latest. Could it be an M2 or is that an M3? I'm not sure. It's definitely not an M4. Anyway, the Carl Gustav is a versatile, reloadable, recoilless launcher that you can reload after each shot and take another shot, basically. So you reload it in 3 to 5 seconds, and then it's up to the gunner to find the target and pull the trigger. And you can launch smoke, you can launch flares, high explosives, airburst, anti-tank rounds, and what have you. Although that said, anti-tank rounds are better used against APCs and IFVs. You should not engage a tank with a Carl Gustav. And then you have its little brother, the AT4. But the AT4 is not, it's not really a little brother. It's actually a Carl Gustav that it's a one-shot Carl Gustav that you throw away. It's the same caliber. The round itself is slightly, it's not designed in the same way. But they are both 84mm, launch the same kind of heat munitions, and the 84 is, like I said, a one-time Carl Gustav that once you fired it, you throw it away. And now, perhaps one of the most important weapon systems of the entire war, the Nlaw, or as it's called in Sweden, RB-57. The British supplied Ukraine with, what was it, 5,000 Nlaws just prior to the Russian invasion. And according to Ukraine, during the first 6 months of the war, out of 1,600 destroyed Russian tanks, the Nlaw destroyed some 500 to 600 of those tanks. So that's a shoulder-fired anti-tank weapon capable of destroying any tank out there. And the Nlaw destroyed a third of the of Russia's tanks during the initial months of the war. So yes, the Nlaw is a very capable and very important weapon system. And it's based on an old Swedish anti-tank guided missile, RB-56. And what Saab did was basically they took that missile system and removed the wire that guided the missile, and then made sure you could launch it from the shoulder instead. So the RB-56 would fly in overhead just like the RB-57 and then attack from the top, just like the RB-57. So all they had to figure out was how to take that anti-tank guided missile and make it so you could fire it from a soldier's shoulder instead of this big setup with tripods and what have you. And then we have TOW, and that is obviously an American weapon system, very capable despite its old age, but it's still very relevant. And Sweden has supplied Ukraine with a bunch of them, especially in the latest aid package that was announced the other week. So Sweden will supply Ukraine with a bunch of TOW missiles, allowing Ukraine to hunt down Russian tanks and hold the line and continue the war in an effort to liberate the country. And we've also seen some old school weapons being used. I think it's the Dutch and some of the Baltic states that have supplied Ukraine with good old 40mm Bofors anti-air guns that I'm sure has been put to good use in hunting down drones and even engaging ground targets. And then, incredibly enough, we've seen footage of Ukrainians operating the Swedish PV-1110 anti-tank rifle. And yes, it's it's basically a Carl Gustav, but on a much larger scale. So as you can see, it is a Carl Gustav that requires a really stable setup in order to effectively use it. And funnily enough, as the thing you can see on top of it, that is a rifle. You aim by first fire, or you used to aim back in the 60s and 70s by first firing a tracer round with the rifle. And once you saw where the tracer round went, if the tracer round hit the target, then you could fire the main weapon and you were sure to hit it. Hit with it. So yes, and Ukraine has been provided these probably from the Baltic states and put them to good use, incredibly enough. And we've seen several countries supplying Ukraine with the good old bandvagn, not bandwagon. This is not a wagon, it's bandvagn. And it's a very capable vehicle. It's built to traverse across any and all types of terrain imaginable. Nothing can hold these vehicles down. They will just keep driving. They will climb or drive through mud, rocks, you name it. You basically can't stop these vehicles from pushing through and advancing. Incredible machines. And Ukraine has been given some of the very oldest versions up to the more modern ones that are actually armored and have weapon stations on top. But yes, they look goofy, but trust me, they are reliable as hell. And if you want to get infantry through some difficult terrain, bandvagn is the way to go, and they will happily drive through terrain where other vehicles will get stuck in the mud or will sink in marshes or whatever. But bandvagns, they will just keep on trucking. Trust me, that these are super important vehicles for Ukraine in maintaining logistics and allowing them to move troops and equipment through the snow and through the mud. Sweden also early on provided Ukraine with machine guns, the KSP-58, the original FN mag, that later went on to become the M240 in the American service. The Swedes had a light machine gun from an American light machine gun that they wanted to be belt-fed, so they asked the Belgians over at FN to make that light machine gun belt-fed instead of magazine-fed, and the Belgians built the KSP-58 that the Belgians called the FN mag. And so this is the original machine gun, basically, that now has become the mainstay machine gun of NATO, more or less. A very fun weapon to shoot with, by the way. And we've also seen images of the classic Swedish K being used by Ukrainian soldiers. No idea how this weapon ended up in Ukraine. But yes, the Swedish K-pist M45, K-pist being Swedish for submachine gun, or rather kulsprutepistol. Bullet spraying pistol is what kulsprutepistol means, and that is then shortened to K-pist. Yes, Swedish K, a very reliable, no-nonsense submachine gun, famously used by the Navy SEALs in Vietnam because it was so reliable. And not sure if the Ukrainians have the Swedish military 9mm, but the Swedish military 9mm ammo was actually designed to have better penetration against armor and trees and what have you than ordinary 9mm. So it's a powerful weapon, no doubt about it, if you have Swedish ammunition in it. And yes, we've seen Swedish anti-tank mines down in Ukraine throughout the war, provided by Sweden and probably the Baltic states as well. And there's also going to be a shipment of hand grenades, a bit unclear which version. My guess is maybe older hand grenades like Spränghandgranat 90. Those are nasty. They contain 5,500 steel pellets. If you compare it to the more modern ones that Sweden uses, that has some 230 steel pellets. So my guess is that Sweden is trying to get rid of some old crates filled with Spränghandgranat 90. And the Ukrainians should be able to put those to good use in the trenches, sending 5,500 steel pellets all around once they go pop. And artillery ammunition, yes, Sweden is committed to supplying Ukraine with 155mm artillery shells and has increased domestic production to make sure Ukraine will have a steady supply of ammunition. We would do well to note that the famous Excalibur round was made in a collaboration between the US and Sweden. So Sweden was involved in developing the Excalibur round, a artillery shell with extended range, and that is GPS guided. So the point of this artillery round is to hit targets at long distance, some say 50, 60 kilometers away, and you can then rely on this one single Excalibur round to hit that target that you would otherwise require 20, 30, maybe 40, 50 rounds to ensure a successful hit. And another artillery round that has been used effectively by Ukraine is the bonus artillery shell, co-developed by France and Sweden. And what it does is it releases two submunitions at the mid-range up in the sky. And these two submunitions then scan for armored targets on the ground below them. And as they drop down, they then lock onto a target and then guide themselves in for a top attack, relying on a heat penetrator, just like an RPG round basically. And by so doing, basically get a guaranteed kill from above. And we're just going to do an honorable mention of base bleed technology developed by Sweden. And this is basically a tiny rocket at the end of the artillery shell that helps the aerodynamics of each shell to perform better and extends the range of each shell. This was developed in the 60s and 70s when was at first a secret, only used by Sweden, but then they had to make some deals with the United States, and the secret classification was removed, and by now everyone is using base bleed technology for artillery rounds. So yeah, honorable mention. Moving on. And of late, I believe everyone has heard of GLSDBs, ground-launched small diameter bombs, a weapon that's been co-developed by the US and Sweden, but also should be noted that Norway and Finland have been in on the action, helping out with developing these weapons. And basically what this is old, stupid, dumb bombs that have been provided with some wings so they can glide for about, I believe it's 100 kilometers, and they were initially dropped by aircraft. So it became a cheap option for aircraft to be able to strike at targets at distance, and using these small diameter bombs. But now United States and Sweden have worked together and figured out how to put rockets onto these small diameter bombs so you can launch them from the ground. And what this enables them is to reach even further. You get a 150 kilometer range. No small thing for Ukraine, because this basically doubles Ukraine's ability to engage targets within Russian-controlled territory. Their maximum range is somewhere around 80 kilometers, I believe, at present. But now with the GLSDBs, that range is extended to 150 kilometers. They are also GPS guided, so they will hit with pinpoint accuracy, and they are maneuverable. They can actually move around and move around say a mountain to reach a building on the far side. And they can also, since they are moving around, it's going to be very difficult to try and figure out from where they have been launched, since they can basically do a U-turn and attack you from behind, more or less. Now, the Swedish government has repeatedly said that it will look into the possibility of sending Gripen fighter jets to Ukraine. And during the fall of 2023, the government received a classified document from the armed forces detailing how, when, and if Gripen could be supplied to Ukraine. The government has since stated that if Sweden are to supply Ukraine with Gripen, then Sweden needs to be a NATO member first. Gripen is capable of launching the Meteor air-to-air missile, the world's most potent BVR weapon system currently available, a missile Sweden helped design and develop. But if any Ukrainian Gripen will be equipped with Meteor remains to be seen, not to mention if Ukraine will get to fly any Gripen at all. But we would do well to remember that Ukrainian soldiers were trained in secret on the RB-17 system, and the training ended when Sweden announced it publicly that Ukraine were to receive the RB-17 missiles. It is not unthinkable that something similar is currently ongoing with the Gripen. Perhaps Ukrainian pilots are being trained in secret, just waiting for Sweden to enter NATO so that Sweden can start shipping Gripen to Ukraine. So there you have it. Quite a lot of weapons from Sweden has been shipped to Ukraine, and they have been very effective. I mean, we have CV90s, we have called Gustav launchers, Nlaws that put a stop to the Russian invasion. Now we have the ground-launched small diameter bombs. I mean, there's no end to it. And I'm a Swede, and if you are a Swede, I think we should be proud over our achievements and our governments, previous and current, because politically Sweden is committed to helping Ukraine, and I think we as a nation are fully supporting sending these weapons to Ukraine, and also sending down Gripen when it's prudent to do so. And it's the right thing to do to help Ukraine win this war so that they can protect their children from being brainwashed into thinking that Ukraine never existed at all. And with all that said, gå på marsch, Ukraine, give them hell.